That's what I need is, yeah. So it's noon tomorrow before I remember. Oh, I didn't get any calls this week. All my spam.
At the end of the meeting, you had to turn this voice.
Yeah.
Unsigned.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the pledge, so if you'll all please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Allison, roll call.
Dave Brutlog,
Here.
Joe Boyd,
Here.
Kevin Kelly.
Here.
Bill Morris.
Here.
Lynn Norris. Here.
So everyone's aware Aaron is sick tonight, so. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. It's all things considered to be routine and non-controversial. And we can do everything in one vote. Items on the consent agenda are approval of the open minutes from October 3rd board meeting and the financial statements and payment of bills for October. Sarah, you wanna talk about this sheet for a minute?
Yeah, there's a sheet there with bills that weren't in the original report because I got those later. A couple of larger core main bills, which are ARPA for drainage, the garbage bill, just some typical bills that we hadn't gotten before. I got reports sent to you.
So none of these bills are on our regular report of bills to be paid. So they did come in and we need to try and get paid, so that's why they're on a special list, so. Okay, are there any questions on the minutes or on anything on the treasurer's reports? Not, do we have a motion to approve consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second? Motion is second to approve the consent agenda items. Is there any final questions or discussions? Allison, roll call.
Joe Boyd,
Yes.
Kevin Kelly,
Yes.
Bill Morris.
Yes.
Lynn Norris. Yeah.
All right, next on the agenda is citizens hearing. We have a 5-minute time limit. Allison, will you, who's first on the list?
Kathy Brooks.
Hi Kathy, please take the podium, turn the mic on, please.
All right. Kathy Brooks, South McLean Street, Hudson. Okay, the only thing I wanted to really say or suggest to the board this evening, first, hi to the new, I assume you're gonna vote again, is on the sewer. From what I understand of the public comments that have been presented, and the public meeting, a lot of the questions deal with things that cannot be answered directly due to the fact that this information at this stage is a proposal. The next phase would be the engineering drawings, which would answer probably 90% of all the questions that the public have. I would suggest or ask that the board approve doing phase 3, if possible, in order to answer the public's questions, as in lift stations and routes and yada yada, that literally you cannot answer until you have that. Also, that piece of it will stand for about, from my understanding, about 15 years. You wouldn't have to go on to phase 4 and phase 5. But phase 3 would stand for about 15 years. And except the pricing would probably change over time, but all the legwork per se would be done. That's what I wanted to bring to the board's attention. I understand that it will be expensive. I was hoping that Greg would be here and be able to give an estimate, because I'm assuming, and it's strictly off the top of my head, probably a couple $100,000 more. How much, you know?
Okay, can you, so
Approximately.
everybody's aware, would you explain what phase 2 and phase 3 are?
Okay, phase 2 is up to submitting information to the EPA, Illinois EPA for assessing grants, et cetera. Phase 3 is the actual engineering, surveying which routes would be best, how many lift stations under this scenario it's gonna take, et cetera. Phase 3 is not as expensive as 4 and 5, because that's the actual construction phases. But phase 3, like I said, would probably last about 15 years, excluding updates to costs. And that way, the residents' questions could be more accurately answered. Because right now it's true, you just don't know until you do the surveys.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we agree. But here's the thing that so the cost of the design plan, at least Greg has not been able to give us like a concrete cost, but in the planning report, it's like $2 million.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's like $1 million and something for BCA, and then another $1 million for the consulting, what is it
Okay, I
called?
didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000.
That's what we were hoping for, and that makes so much more sense.
Because,
So-
like I said, part of it can be paid with TIF, but
Not
for,
too much,
but to
yeah.
that amount,
I know, and we're not guaranteed that EPA grant that would be max 5 million, because that's what we were kind of hoping would help that cost. But if we're not going to proceed with the construction, then we cannot go for that grant, because we're either gonna be expected to pay it back.
it's all or none.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well, like I
so
said,
if you have any creative ideas on how we.
I don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but you know, that's, like I said, that particular piece of it would answer so many of the questions that the people are fighting back on.
Mhm.
Because like most people, there's so many ifs.
Yeah.
And ifs make people tense.
I think that's where we're in the same place, so it's frustrating. We have some ideas on how to kind of maybe find.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money. Yeah, I'm just knowing our budget,
Yeah, well, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I
like-
don't know where we pull it from.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Olson?
Bobby Dicker.
Bobby Dicking from Pettit Drive, also from Holly Jolly Hudson, the community Christmas lighting display. I'm coming here tonight to request the $500 that I believe the board has approved before for the lighting display. And I was going to give you just kind of what we did with it last year was we put the lights in the big tree that is out there. This year, we are trying to use those funds to continue to just improve what's already there. And then also, we're gonna be trying to add a flagpole, we call it a mega tree. If you've been to my display on Pettit Drive, I have one in my display. Nothing but lights, it's about 20 feet tall. There's a way to do it with a flagpole that would actually be installed in the ground that we could actually remove. Denny and his crew can mow over it every year. That way there's nothing, portraying from the ground. So I think Nikki has already done some preliminary chit-chatting with either Denny or Aaron about that. So we want to move forward with that. So it's gonna cost us more than the 500, but at least we could potentially use that this year. My other thing I was coming to the board about was if there's any other ideas we tried doing last year with the fencing off of the playground equipment during the display for the months. First of all, the fencing cost us around $400 and it was destroyed in the first wind. I don't know if more posts in the ground would help with that or just heavier duty fencing, but we threw all that stuff away because obviously it wasn't reusable. The other thing would be is if anybody has any suggestions as we could either not fence off the whole area. I know there was, I believe, a complaint last year because we happened to have gotten 65-degree weather in January and the park was closed down and somebody showed up and wanted to play and it was closed. So I don't know what other suggestions you want from me from that. you know, we normally don't get that unseasonable weather in the middle of January. So, that's all I've got. I just knew that, I thought that, it was a thing that came every year, from the village board, it was already in the budget, but I was told I was supposed to show up today.
Well, can I ask you a question,
Yes, sir.
Doug? So from last year, so I mean, can you tell us like what,
Kevin, can you turn your?
oh yeah, sorry about that. But can you tell us like what you raised, like on all the donations?
Sure.
I know what the private donations,
Sure.
all that, and then where those funds maybe were.
So
I know they were benefiting some
Right.
people, right?
So last year, we were able to give around, it was like $300 was our donation to Green Gables. We ended up, I think overall, we raised around $2,000, but we also added a ton to the park last year. We're not gonna do that this year. First of all, it was just, we're trying to build some of the committee people and the volunteers, because Nikki and I cannot do this on our own. For 2 years, we practically have done 85% of the work, and it's killing us. So if it's gonna continue, we're gonna have to have at least 1 year where we're gonna just kind of maintain what we already have. That being said, we decided this year that we were going to make our donation to the Hudson PTO, to Hudson Grade School, not the PTO, but the school itself. They have some beautification projects that they're wanting to do, some logoed windows. I don't know if you've been to Normal West High School, they have all the logos on the windows at the front of the school. Mrs. Nepler wants to do that to Hudson Elementary. She also wants to get new rugs for the entryways of the school that are all logoed with Hudson Elementary and the Jaguar. So those are things like that that she has given us that says that that's what they're gonna use the funds for. So this year, being that we're not going to be adding as much to the park this year, and we're just using it to more maintain, updating some of the electrical situations that I've got going on and whatnot, we hope to give, you know, at least 500, 700 to the school, to make that a bigger donation. And then to continue that from here on out for other donors.
So last year was $300 to Green Gables,
Right.
and forgive me, I don't.
And we didn't deplete, we didn't go down to
Okay,
zero.
so mine's an accounting background, so I'm
Sure.
gonna get kind of details of it, so I don't wanna.
Right.
But I'm doing it, so how many, so like of the sites that you have out there already, I think last year you had, how many, like 20 some?
I'd have to look, and we had the bank, we had Childers, we had the church.
Yeah, so, I mean, do they pay like $50 each, or do they,
Depends on the size of the
Okay.
display, most of them are paid $100 a piece.
okay, so basically what you're saying, so if it was like 25, just say, so that would be $2,500 plus the donations from us, and I think Lions Club, I think, gave you some too, right, from last year?
They did
And
their
that-
display,
For the
I
display,
look.
so then from all that, you had expenses.
Right.
Plus that, and the amount of donation went down to $300, correct?
Right,
Okay,
the year before, I think we ended up giving the love baskets around 100, we ended up giving them the rest of it out of the account, because we just
Okay.
didn't have anything left over. We didn't wanna completely deplete our account this past year, because
Okay.
there is some advertising costs and things like that we start off with.
okay,
Like so far this year, I spent $300 to try and get GFI outlets so far that are at the actual displays rather than at the building themselves. Because it seems like when one thing trips it, the whole display goes. And of course, obviously, we don't want that to happen, so
Okay.
trying to troubleshoot.
okay. So,
And then the fence, I
let's say,
think, is
so if we
fine.
say about $3,000, so $3,000 in revenue, would that be correct?
I think it was around 20, I don't know how many displays I had last year, I have to go back and look at the chart.
Okay, well, that's what I'm just trying, so I'm
Right.
trying to think, $3,000. Okay, $2,700 expenses, so do you build those for each display, do you provide materials, et cetera, for each display then, or?
No.
I guess I don't quite
So-
understand how that works.
They come in and we bring electrical to their space in the park.
Okay, like extension cords, and, okay,
And then they bring their display and pop it into place.
okay,
So like the bank made their own display, Childers made their own display.
and they
But
they put
then-
it up themselves, right?
Right. I
Okay,
help them, obviously,
Okay.
depending on who it is.
okay,
And then we actually, as far as the committee and actually the group of Holly Jolly Hudson, we are the ones that did the archway and some of the stuff that's in between those displays, like the mini trees that are along the display,
Okay,
the forest that we built last year with all the lights in it. We do all the safety work, all of the electrical work. So all the displays have to do is come in and put them into place.
okay. Okay. Okay,
And last year, I bought over $500 worth of commercial LED lights that went into one tree. And that's what we used you guys' money for last year.
okay.
Okay, Bob, I gotta ask this, at the risk of sounding like a Grinch. You know, the village donating money for the Christmas tree lights is great, and I don't mind doing that. I do mind the committee reallocating that money to other organizations or businesses. And so my question is, why aren't you just reusing whatever's left from this year for next year's lights?
Because there's not that much left over. I mean, we have certain expenses that we do every year. So we don't have, we haven't done this for 10 years. I don't have a surplus of money.
I'm not asking, you've donated the last couple of years, so you have some surplus.
Right, but I'm saying is we end each year, the first year we donated whatever was left in our account to the Love Baskets. So we started year 2 again with 0. That's when I actually went and made an account at the bank for the Holly Jolly Hudson. This last year, I had about $400 left, so we gave 300 of it to Green Gables.
Right. And
So I had $100.
I have a problem with us donating you money, and then you decided you're gonna donate some of that money to another organization or another business.
The very first year that we brought this to the board, we talked about the fact that we were going to be using it for a charitable donation. So I don't understand why you're now confused that we're giving money to
I
somebody.
don't remember that part of it, and I apologize for not remembering that.
Do other board members know that? I mean, that was the whole thing, is that our mission statement from the very first year was that we want to create a Christmas display and holiday magic for everybody, with also giving back to our local organizations.
Well, hey, Bob, maybe,
It's been on our flyer.
if you could do this, maybe, I don't know if this would help, but could you actually just kind of break down your expenses? Like, hey, this is the amount, go back and check and say, this is the amount that we gained. These are from the different sources, you know, the individual businesses, or not individual, but even aggregate. Hey, you know, you don't need to say, oh, I know Chief Cut did one. You don't need to break it down by individual businesses, but just as an aggregate. And then kind of what your expenses are from last year, and then that maybe give us a better idea. With
To me,
that
it
is.
doesn't matter, all the expenses are legitimate. I'm just saying whatever's left at the end of one year should go into the lights for the next year. That's my opinion. You know, and it's up to the trustees to decide whether or not to continue to do this in the future. So I think there might even be some legal implications as far as us donating money for this and then you giving it to other, especially a business. So there'll be, you know, we haven't budgeted for this year, and I don't know what the trustees will do. You know, we'll have to vote on it tonight. But my recommendation for the future is, if you're not gonna keep that money for Christmas lights, then my recommendation to the board is that we don't donate to it anymore. If we wanna donate to the school, we can. If we wanna donate to Green Gables, we can. But I'm not for you donating money that we give to you, you know, some of that for other businesses or organizations. So that's my opinion, just so you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, you just said you were gonna donate like 500, I think, to the school or something. It's like, we're gonna give you 500 and then you're gonna donate 500 somewhere. It seems a little weird. We, like Dave said, we could give the 500 to the school directly that instead. So I think what he was saying with the not donating was you should just keep it in the account all year. There's no reason for you to empty out the account, right? Then you'd have 400 coming into this year, you'd need less. I mean, all the donations are for Christmas lights, I think, so.
Like I said, the very first year we did this was to be able to make it kind of towards a charitable thing. I understand, you know, where you're coming from as far as Green Gables being a business versus the Love Baskets being a charitable thing, you know, or the school or whatever. But again, that was not brought forth to us when we proposed this before we even started it 2 years ago. So you can see what my frustration is where all of a sudden you guys are having a change of heart for something that was put in place 2 years ago with, yeah, let's do this. So that's where I'm coming from. So, I mean, we can take it all together and say, nope, we're not going to make any more donations to anybody. And you might see 3 or 4 of these organizations and businesses go away and say, well, we're not gonna do this anymore. And then your display in the park is gonna be kibosh.
I don't think anyone's saying like, I think we're just saying, I fully understand starting something from scratch, having an idea, getting community involvement, committee members, figuring out the whole budget thing and making it work for a few years. And sometimes there's some restructuring in there that needs to happen. If you're concerned, like, I can understand the concern, like, hey, you see it as we're donating the money to help you actually put on the display, because we do enjoy it. Like, I think the community does enjoy having that, and a lot of people visit it and are a part of it. So we support that part of it, but maybe it is the donation part that in the planning process, you guys can kind of restructure how it's done. Or maybe if you're concerned if you can't do it, or you need to give it a few more years to build it before you can then start donating back to something, then you could talk to the participating vendors in it, if they do mind, you know, if that's why they're doing it, or are they doing it to be a part of the community, get their name out, you know, show support. You might be surprised at the answer, I don't know. So just some things to think about.
For what you're doing is a great thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great Christmas event. My only problem is not keeping the money for Christmas event, is when you donate it to somebody else, some of what's left. So, think about that. Does anybody else have any questions for Bobby? What you've done, Bobby, is a great thing. Don't dispute that. We love what you do. It's just what happens to the money is an issue for the board or for me. Thank you, Bobby. Yep. Allison?
Rory Wayland.
Hi, Maury Whalen, School 2 North Pine Street. A couple of months ago, Dave asked me to check out the Havens detention basin. At that time, we weren't completely sure how the water was being discharged down to the ditch. So I had our good friend Bob Yell, who is a top engineer for the city of Wilmington. In fact, it's kind of part of what he does every day. Bob went up and checked everything out, and he was quite impressed on how that was constructed many years ago. And we do have a water control. It's basically controlled by tiles. I think there's 3 30-inch tiles maybe feeding into the basin, and then there's a 15-inch tile that's discharging the water down to the ditch. And fortunately, Bob said that's exactly what it should be. And so I think I and some other people thought maybe that the water was just flowing freely from that area without any controls, but that's false. So we're in good shape. I think, part of the problem, when the water hits the ditch, there's very little that we can do. And we all know who's lived here for a while, that west of town, unfortunately, has put us in some problems. 6 Mile, when our water competes for the same space, 6 Mile is gonna win. They're a lot bigger than we are. The interstate, the culvert's not big enough. I talked to another engineer and he said, today's standards, that would probably be at least twice the size. It's just not large enough. So I think our only option, I shouldn't say only, I think one of our options would be probably to look at land on the east side of our town. while there's still some land available, and to maybe look into maybe purchasing some ground for future detention basins. I think, hopefully Hudson will continue to grow at a very modest rate. But I think, we need to have some things in place so that people have dry basins. And of course. So, any questions?
Or did you say the 2 tiles that run underneath the interstate are the bottleneck?
Absolutely. I think that, or the first bottleneck really is when our water makes that turn and goes underneath, just west of the interstate. It goes underneath the bridge. If you ever get over there, I tell you, I would invite everyone here, if you haven't seen that in action during a heavy rain, be careful, don't fall in, boy, you wouldn't last. I mean, the water just moving really unbelievable. But our ditch water, it's like a T-bone. 6 miles running this way and our water runs right into it and of course merges with it and beats on out. But when it hits the 6 mile water, it definitely has to slow down. I mean, it's unbelievable. The volume of water there it's just crazy. It's
Now, let's go out and look at that the next time we get a big rain. Because
yeah.
I haven't seen it pool up out there.
I don't know exactly what it's not just that one area that, by the ramp, you see water sitting there sometimes, the pool. This is what, actually, you go over a little bit, and you turn right there at the bridge, and probably 400 or 500 yards from, not that far, from the ramp. And then it goes another maybe 100, 150 yards where our water turns into, or merges in 6 mile. And then I would also tell you, if you've never been out looking at our culverts during a heavy rain, that's interesting too, really. Take a look at it. And you kind of see where I'm coming from, where it would help us, I think, all of us here in town, if we had a place to park some water and not wait for, unfortunately for a terrible disaster that people would be wiped out. So, and I don't know, land's not gonna be available for it. Hudson is probably, I think, one of the hottest spots around. So I would tell, hopefully, guys would maybe take a look at things to see what might be available or could be available. And some of that might be, I don't know, it could be in the TIF area. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's monies that we have to use in that situation. So that might even be a situation that we might look at.
Okay, and just so you're aware, Danny may have told you, yes, some other things we can do that will help get the water out of town quicker. So we will be working on those long term also.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Maury. Ellison, is there anybody else? All right, then the citizens portion of our hearing is over. Next is reports of me. First thing I would like to do is recommend to our board that we have Mitchell Telke be our trustee to join our board. I've talked to Mitchell, Phil's talked to him. Mitchell has volunteered to be on the board. Couple meetings back at sewer, he had a lot of good questions and presented them quite professionally, and so I think he'll be a great addition to the board. So I'd like for one of the trustees to ask questions or else make a motion to nominate him for the board at opening.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to nominate Mitchell Tilkey to become a new trustee.
All right, do we have any second?
I'll second.
Do we have any final questions or discussions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ellison, would you like to swear Mitchell in so we can join us up here?
Yeah. I. I, then state your name,
I, Mitch Tilkey,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of village trustee
the duties of the office of village trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Mitch. Thank you. Glad to have you here. And you know what's going on, so you know we got a lot of things going on, so.
I'll have some questions for Mr. Dickens, so maybe we can circle back around to those a little bit later.
All right, next on the agenda is the sewer status options. Sarah, can you go ahead and pull that up? Trustees had a meeting a couple weeks ago and hammered out what we think are our options for going forward. And while we may discuss those tonight, we will not be doing a vote, making any decisions on where to proceed. But, all right, the first option is to stop everything right now. Obviously, an option that can be stopped at any time. Second option is, do we want to put it at a vote on our next election? We wanted to put something on, it would be a non-binding referendum type question. We would have to give it to the county by January 1st. And we're not even sure what the question would be as far as do we want to proceed or not, because we don't have solid cost estimates. So it is an option to do that, but we're not even sure what the question would be. So the third option was to move forward with the design stage, get as many grants as possible. And the big gotcha there is if we do move forward and don't build a system, we have to pay all the design costs. And I think that was upward of $2 million. And that's in the final report, the final preliminary report from Gray. So those would be a very expensive move if we didn't keep going. If we did keep going and build it, the IEPA grant that we got could help cover the cost of the design phase, the $2 million for that. So, and the $2 million is included in the overall $23.5 million project cost. Item B there says we could move to a new firm instead of BCA. And we are concluding phase 1 of our 5-phase plan. And that was one of the things at the end of phase 1 was to make a determination. If we do move forward, do we want to continue to use BCA or use a different engineering firm? Item 4, pursue more grants before moving to the design stage. We know there's at least one IEPA grant available. There is a one voice trip that the county has a lot of representation at. It goes out to DC and talks to our senators and representatives in DC and requests funding for special projects. USDA Rural Development has some grants and loans available for sewer projects. We could ask all of our federal and state senators and representatives for money. And we can also talk to Benward to see if they might pay for the force main from Hudson to their system, which I believe is about a $5 million item. And we may also be looking at getting a financial consultant to help us pursue the financing on this. Option 5, we may have another engineering firm look at our current plan, see if there are changes that should be considered. And item 6, try to take this big project into smaller projects, have the grants be a larger part of the total. So, and that was if we could apply for the IEP grant multiple times, have an IEP grant pay for this part of the construction, and then a year later get another IEP grant to pay for another part of construction. So to possibly get more grant money that way. So those are where we're at right now with our options. I'd like the trustees to give us what their thoughts are, or see if they have any things we would like to add to this. This was the results of our last meeting, and I think it's a good, pretty complete set of lists of ways to go forward. So Anybody wanna make any comments or thoughts? We need to make a decision in December of whether or not we're gonna put anything on the ballot.
I don't think we're near ready for anything for a ballot, so.
Okay,
And the project as a whole, I feel like we're kind of stuck. Until we can figure out, cause I would love to move forward with the design plan and get more concrete data of cost and what it looks like. But we don't have $2 million to spend, and if we're not absolutely 100% sure we're going to go to construction, which we can't with the current cost of what it is, we can't connect to the IEPA grant. So, I mean, a financial consultant to see if they can come up with any other, if that exists for our size of,
yeah, Aaron was gonna get us the contact for that, he's not here tonight, so.
yeah,
I don't know what they can all do for us.
right,
When he comes up with that name, we'll either have them come to a meeting or set up a special meeting for them to tell us what they can do for projects like this.
and I mean, and reach out to senators or,
Yeah,
see if we can get
okay,
on.
I do have a meeting coming up with Tim Irwin at Benward. It's Thursday at 11, if anybody wants to join me. Just gonna talk about what Hudson's role has been, with the sewer study. And they announced a huge expansion project, a $300 million expansion that they're gonna be working on over the next 5 to 10 years. And I wanna see how that's gonna impact what we would have to pay Benward. Whether the monthly fees would go up or the annual real estate tax would go up, and get a feel for that. I also don't know how much funding he's planning on requesting from the One Voice trip. And I wanna talk to him about us possibly combining with him to request financing on the One Voice trip. So I'm gonna be going Thursday at 11, if anybody wants to go with me, just let me know. So,
If we were gonna add something to the ballot, I think we should add the question of, should we proceed with additional steps? Right, because that's the question that I think we're asking ourselves now is, should we even proceed? Not should we proceed with the construction, but should we even proceed with the next step? And in that explanation, we should be upfront with the approximate cost would be X. And I think then we would know how the town feels, and if we should even continue to have you advocate, for us to advocate at all, in this project, or should we put it on the back burner and table it, realizing that there's other things that the town may wish to accomplish before this becomes a major issue.
that's a possibility. The big if in all of this is how much is it's gonna cost? Because there's a lot of opinions that it's way too expensive the way it is.
I would also ask that instead of us trying to piggyback on their $300 million request to make it 350 million, I think, I indicated to you when I expressed my interest in this position that I would be willing to advocate on behalf of the town of Hudson to our senators in Washington or to our senators at the Illinois Senate or House. If we haven't already done that personally with our board members or our mayor, I think that would be a first step that we could gauge what is the level of interest. Given we're a small town, we're looking to help the environment, we're looking at adding dollars for climate change. There was something that was just recently passed by the Senate at the US House of Representatives and Senate, talking about climate change initiatives, right? May some of that money be applicable to what we're trying to do in the long term. So I still express my commitment. I think a $200 plane ticket to Washington and however much a hotel stay would be for a couple of nights would probably be worth it if we could set up some meetings with somebody there, or if we could set up a meeting with Senator Durbin, Duckworth, our House members, et cetera, here in Illinois. So I think there's creative ways and creative solutions to potentially do it on our own. I think if we lump it into a bigger thing like that, then we become at the whim of those people we lumped it under. And that could become troublesome in the long run with how those funds are allocated and how they want us to spend it. If that makes sense.
Fuller, Joe, Kevin, you guys wanna throw anything else in at this time?
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell said quite a bit, and I kind of agree with him on that, because I think I think going forward, I think when we look back at Allison's minutes from October 3rd, we had questions that were from the past with the current contract. We were, original budget of 76,000, we got that response from Greg at 5 o'clock tonight. I was able to kind of read through that. Okay, I think there's culpability on him and BCA. I think there's culpability on all of us up here too, why we went over budget. I guess I think when we're going forward, I think that number one point, do we stop right now or do we go forward? I think this, depending on how much money we're gonna do, if we do the things like Mitchell says, okay, hey, maybe there's some non-cost or minimal cost type alternatives that we can look into it. Yeah, I mean, who can say no to that? But if we're gonna start spending, $300,000, $500,000, $600,000 to get a design plan, I would say absolutely not on that. But yeah, I mean, if there's still a possibility of looking into it, there's no harm in that, but I'm just kind of concerned about being about twice over or maybe it's not twice because we did some other things too, but being over budget. And if something small like that, if we start throwing money at consultants and other things, I'm more concerned about how much cost. And I think in retrospect, go back here in this BCA contract, we should have probably had a fixed contract to say, hey, it's gonna be for these deliverables, it should have been $76,000 or whatever that X dollar amount could have been. And then we wouldn't, but that's hindsight. But going forward. That's what
Can I jump in and speak to that, Dave?
Please do, Pat.
So we negotiated aggressively to get BCA to agree to a not to exceed price in contract, and they refused. So, and the other observation I have just on BCA's billing is the project they're actually the most over on is the mapping project. They anticipated $5,000 to $6,000 including costs, and they've billed you $28,500 on it. And then there's some other work that went beyond the scope of the original contract, which would include $14,000 for public meetings and hearings, which wasn't within the scope of the initial contract. And then it's hard to tell of the remaining billing how much fell within the scope of the original contract. But we did seek a fixed dollar and not to exceed contract, which they would not enter into with the village. In fact, there were several draft contracts proposed which had their exact estimate included as not to exceed, which they rejected.
And I maybe ask an obvious question, just being new to the board, how was this company selected as the one that we were going with? And were there other options on the table?
Yes, we did RFPs. No, we did RFQs, didn't we, Kathy?
Yes.
We had 4 different companies respond with RFQs and talked to all 4 of them and got pricing from BCA. We did get pricing from all 4. This is a couple of years ago.
No, we got pricing from 2,
From 2 of them?
yeah, and decided to go with BCA.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a signed contract for the 76,000.
76,000 was for the work up to the end of phase 1.
Oh, and we went through phase 2, no, yes.
Phase 2 is deciding whether or not to continue the project.
We went up to stick where the grant, to where the paperwork could be submitted to the Illinois EPA.
That has been submitted.
And I thought that was all part of the initial contract of 76,000.
I thought so too. I thought everything we were doing was part of phase one. And
Except
so
for
Greg
mapping.
sent me an email this afternoon and I've got to go through it because there were at least one or two emails from him that said they would like to proceed with these tasks at this cost. And I never gave him the okay to do that because I didn't want to authorize anything past phase one. So that's why I thought we were still at $76,000.
And I thought there was, as far as the mapping, I thought that was 12,000, supposedly about $12,000.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. There was 8 to 12,000, somewhere in there that we knew was not gonna be covered.
Yeah,
And
that
we
was
voted to
covered.
go ahead and proceed with that.
So that was 5,000 to 6,000. I have that contract in front of me. Their cost estimate was 5,000 to 6,000, but it's a time and material contract.
Okay,
They guessed it would be 5,000 to 6,000. They billed you 28,500.
And I think right there is some of the concern the community has, right? They told us originally they were gonna bill us five to 6,000, they actually charged us 28,500. What is the 25 million gonna turn into? And I think that's the question that the community has, and that's why I think us as a board, we need to do more of the legwork to do this ourselves and not rely on companies that stand to profit from our community to give us that answer. That's my
I agree
personal.
with the second part of your statement. I don't know that the going over budget was a concern for a few of the people. I think the budget the cost of it as is right now and the cost to them is their major concern, because it is too high. So that's why I think if you put it for a vote sooner than later, like to even proceed, like by December to even do anything more, I can almost guarantee how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
So for me, my understanding of the project is I think we need more information to even do that yet. Because we need to know, can we get the design plan paid for? Because if it doesn't cost us anything or minimal, not even hundreds of thousands of dollars, like we don't have it in our budget to allocate to that, like I know that. So I'm not at the point of doing that, but if we could get it paid for, then it's kind of a no-brainer to do it, because that's going to give us all those concrete answers that we need to proceed with this. And then if we get, if Benward agrees to pay for the 5 million line, then that's like $7 million now out of that $26 million cost. So that just took down, what was our, to get $50 or $50? Yeah.
To get down, to get down to a $50 a month bill, we can only finance $5 million.
Right.
So that means we need to find another 18 million.
Okay, so I mean, that's just more work for us to do, and I feel like we do have a lot of legwork to do, but we're nowhere near for any sort of vote for it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah,
I think if we were gonna go to a vote, that's what the vote would be. Do we proceed or not? And gauge, because it's not binding, right?
oh,
So
true,
we would gauge what the level of our community, the people that voted us in, are wanting. And then we could determine how much do we put into this particular project.
so the question was if we put it for a vote, some would like to see us stick to what the vote is. And it's not binding, but we can give our word that we're gonna.
Right.
Which I'm not for that at this point.
Right.
So then,
What's the point of the vote?
exactly.
Yeah. I agree.
The other challenge you run into, which your summary alludes to this, but the other challenge you run into when submitting questions to referendum is there's only so much space on the ballot, and you ultimately have to phrase it as a yes or no question. And there's a lot of gray and nuance here that makes it difficult to condense into a really clear yes, no question that's readily understandable on a ballot.
Okay, any other comments from any other trustees?
I don't disagree with you that if it's free to do the design, we should go ahead and do it rather than hand us $1 million.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we can't come up with the other 18 million, I wouldn't see a big point either.
Sure, yeah, I understand that. But we still have that IEPA grant too that we could apply for, that's the 5.
Yeah,
So 5,
but those are already included in the 23 million cost, right?
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, what we really,
Oh,
aren't they?
7 million is already included,
And
in
it
the
costs
cost.
23. It
7
really
million,
costs
2
30
grants.
million, and we're getting 7.
oh, really?
Yeah,
All that's already spent, all that 7, that 5 and that 2 is already
You did-
spent.
Okay, so it was the 23
Yeah.
in finance, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Okay, so,
And there are no guarantees on the 5 and the 2 million also.
Yeah.
right, but I'm also thinking like, as we're working to figure out if we can get the design plan money, are we also, in addition to looking at other options at the same time, to,
Yeah, the only
So
thing
more
I think there is to do at
financial.
this point is to go find some magic money
Yeah.
somewhere. If you've got the time to go find it, woo. But I mean, I don't see any way forward without finding a whole bunch of money.
And we wouldn't ask for 23, we would ask for 50. Right? Because by the time this project is done, inflation's gonna get to 50. So you don't ask for what you need, you ask for what you possibly may.
I don't think it will get to 50.
Well, but if it does, we have it covered,
I
right?
mean,
So
we
then
have to
can tell-
figure that all out.
That's what I mean, but
How
then we
much we
could,
would actually ask.
I
then
see
we
what
can
you're
tell the
saying.
Now, if
town,
they ask us for documentation on what it's gonna cost, we don't have $50 million. You know, we have 23.5 million for the cost. So,
we can talk about it.
yeah, we'd have to work that out.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I've got a comment. I'm all for you going to Washington, Mitch. So if we can come up with 25 million, that would be great. And that's really the only way I see that we can go forward with the project is to get, 15 million or something close to that, to get those bills down under $100 a month per citizen.
In addition to the 7, the 7's. not-
Exactly, well,
So,
where we're at right now, yes.
Thanks, Phil. Any other comments? Now, we're gonna move on to the next bullet, which is a discussion on GNS. So everybody's aware, GNS is a IT company that provides services for support for systems and software. GNS is a relatively new company, it's been around 5 or so years. I'm highly recommended from 1 or 2 other small villages. They gave a presentation on what their services would be for us and what the cost would be. And the cost would be probably half of the other presentations, any of the other presentations we've had. The costs were a lot more reasonable and something we might be able to afford. I've asked Sarah to check to see what we can do since we did not budget for this. Sarah, would you like to fill us in? Can you use Allison's mic?
At this point, I'm looking, Dave, you brought up the idea of possibly using interest as an option to help pay for that. Looking at that, that is something that would make it feasible for us. Pat, is that something we can change in our budget at this point in the year? Would we need to wait till next year, or where would that be?
You can change the budget at any point in time to appropriate funds that weren't previously appropriated. So you have to do what's called, you could, if you want a new line item or need to move money in a way more significant than 10% of the total fund appropriation, we do it in a supplemental appropriation. Otherwise, you could do a line item transfer. The line item transfer takes money from one pot or one line item and moves it in the same fund to another line item. The supplemental appropriation says we're not going to take from one line item. We're just going to appropriate money that we hadn't previously appropriated. So it's routinely done, not a significantly complex process, and can be readily done if you decide to do that. can do it at any point in time in a fiscal year.
Okay, so I believe the monthly costs were gonna be $1,500 a month,
1365.
13, and then there's a one-time cost. And then also if we switch to voice over IP, there would be a savings to us of
Almost
about
400.
400 a month. So what I wanna do then is I'll work with you to see if we can find a single line item that's big enough that we can just take money out of that to pay for the GNS expenses.
Okay.
And if we don't have anything that'll work for, then we'll have to do a budget appropriation or budget change.
Yeah, it sounds like we can just do a line item transfer, since it's a small enough amount, from what Pat is saying.
Right,
I don't know that we have a line that will have that much in it monthly.
okay, so
I think
we're
we'll have
gonna need
to
to
do
work
the
on
other.
the.
Yeah, I don't- yeah.
Okay, so will you work with Matt, so we have something to present at our December meeting?
Yep.
Okay, I'm guessing there was good thoughts on the board members to proceed with GNS without doing a vote tonight.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, is like, I mean, we have different budgets, like, but this is gonna affect the police department as well.
Yeah, it's like
So
everybody.
basically, could we, I mean, if we need to, could we take it out of different departments? So
Yeah,
that-
that's
is that
what I
you're
would
planning?
do, yeah, I
Okay,
would break it
gotcha.
down and look between
Yeah.
departments and go that way with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have something, we can vote on at our next meeting and proceed with using them as our service provider. So,
And that is, I think he said that is a month-to-month contract with that, which is a great thing.
yeah, it's
So
month
if
to
it-
month.
if it doesn't work out, I think it's gonna be good for us, but if it doesn't work out, we can terminate it.
Right. Okay, so we'll do that, we're GNS, and hopefully we'll have something by December. That's the last of my bullet points, but before we go on, I wanna thank the Halloween committee for organizing our trunk or treat festival this year. I think it was another great trunk or treat festivity, there were a lot of people that went, I've not heard a head count. But there were a lot of people up there, a lot of kids enjoyed it, a lot of adults enjoyed it, so. I think my favorite part was probably the donut eating the cops, but.
Hey Dave,
All right.
hey Dave, the count that we came up with was right around 375.
375, kids or adults or both?
Kids.
Kids. Wow, that's amazing. It's grown a lot and it's a great program, so. I wanna thank the Halloween organization and all of the businesses and organizations that helped donated their time and efforts and made it a successful event, so. I hope it'll keep going forward next year. I received a notification from Northern Illinois Gas that tomorrow, from 5 to 7, they're gonna have a free virtual fair on the internet. It's for anyone who thinks they might need assistance paying their energy bills this winter. We posted their flyer on our website, and so if you know of anyone that might need assistance paying their energy bills, have them look on our website or get a hold of Sarah so they can figure out how to watch this video, or I'm sorry, not watch the video, join this online session, so. We haven't had time to get the word out, we just got the email earlier this week, so. I also want to run another idea past the board. We've got a lot of work coming up for Mitchell with zoning and ordinances, and Kathy also did all of our TIF coordination. And I'm wondering if we should move the TIF coordination to a different trustee to try and help balance out the workloads a little more. Any of the trustees have any thoughts on that?
As long as it's not me, I'm in favor of that.
Joe had that same look.
Yeah, I didn't mind taking it, just because I feel like I've had experience with it so far with my Kathy and some things, so I don't mind learning more about it if nobody else Bill,
can have
you
it.
say it.
Well, either that or we can give it to Aaron, he's not.
Oh, yeah.
I think it'll just make it a little easier, and it's one chunk of work that's fairly independent from zoning and ordinances, so. Kathy, at some point in time, I'd like you to help Lynn get caught up to speed on the cliff stuff too. So, I've already asked Kathy to work with Mitchell to start that transition. All right, that's all I had, so next on our agenda is water, public property, streets and zoning. Denny?
Water usage was 2.78 million, 89,000 a day. And, I think you guys all probably saw an email from Sarah that we had, up near 15% water loss last month. So we went, kind of stopped drainage for a few days, and, me and Mike went around and started testing tiles, since that's where we had some of the problem before, since you can't see it. And we found a tile that was running chlorine, and we called up the Illinois Rural Water Association, and Chuck came out and found a leak, and we were able to fix that. And he asked us, and to let you guys know that Sarah wrote this letter and sent off to him, is that they appreciate thank you letters, as they use that to help for them to receive funding from rural.
Yeah, they're grant funded. His position is grant funded, so they take those letters to DC every year to show how much they've done to help people and why it is an important position. And so we just wrote the letter for him to be able to take to DC.
Sarah, will you set up another letter for me and the trustees to sign, send off?
Sure, I can do that one, yeah.
So to let you guys know, without keeping the meeting too late, is he has listening devices that he can put on a hydrant, or he can put on meters and hear. And he showed me them, and I'm around there with him when he's doing that. But it basically sounds like you're putting your ear up to a seashell. You can hear, you know, the staticky water sound. And so after we'd sent off this letter and fixed it, and knew exactly where it was, you know, we had painted an X on the ground, and I called him back and said, well, I'm gonna need to take your letter back, because you were 6 inches off on where you pinpointed the leak was. So it's pretty amazing how it just listening, he's able to determine how close the leak is. So anyway, that was a great help, and they're a great resource. As you probably seen the signs around, and I know Kevin saw us in action the other day, testing hydrants and flushing them and stuff. Be doing some more of that here in the next couple days until that's completed. The West and Walnut Street drainage line is all in and completed, and the road's widened on part of West Street there as well, that will pave over next year. And we're about a third of the way or so of the drainage project from the creek up to Pearl and West Street there by the daycare. Winterized the parks, so they're closed for the year. And then also I partook in the Halloween festivities, and took some of our stuff, as I had mentioned at the last board meeting, up there for display. And I believe that last year, I don't know if you can remember, Mark, I think Lori told me that there was around 300. Of course, the weather was a lot nicer last year than it was this year. And so with adding the 3 stops, we were very busy moving people from one spot to the other. And the Susan and Lori do a great job of coordinating everything, getting it put together, and taken down and cleaned up right away, and I think that's a great thing to keep having. We get a lot of support from the community, so that's all I had.
Anybody have questions for Danny?
Did you put any numbers in the letter, like gallons we think we were losing a month, or money? I mean, I would highly suggest we should do that. and
I can do that in
quantify.
the next one, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, we
think
should
that- we didn't
quantify
know
it
at that
also
point,
in the
but now we
services.
can- Now we'll watch it, we can see.
Yeah, I was able to watch it, and it looks like that leak there was causing us about 4 or 5%, as best as I could
That's
tell.
huge.
So, yeah, tens of thousands of gallons.
Where was the leak at, or approximately?
It was a water service line, had a leak in it about the size of a pencil. And, it was right above a tile, so it was leaking right into the tile, and it was actually in somebody's driveway, so.
So was it in the
The
service
copper
line?
line,
So it was past the curb stop, so it was before the curb
it
stop,
was
so that
between
means.
the main and the meter.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha, okay,
Yep, so it's our responsibility, and
right.
that's not getting,
Or they didn't get charged additional because
Correct.
of that, and yeah, so you couldn't find it that way because it was before that meter.
right. And the type of leak it was, and the way we're able to fix it, there was no water had to be shut down, no boil order, and anything like that, so.
Isn't that line likely to have another hole? I mean, why did it get a hole right there?
Or 700 other lines in town are likely to have holes. Yes,
Pretty
and again, I say this numerous times, the vac truck on this made the job a couple hours. So it's a great piece of equipment to have.
Thank you, Danny. Next on the list, Village Marshal, Mark Patty.
All right, you have the report that I typed up for you, and you can see the hard numbers or the hard statistics at the top of the report. And then I broke down for you again some of the meetings that I attended, reports that we took. We took 4 criminal reports last month, as you can see. Identity theft report, 2 criminal damage reports, and a harassment by electronic communication report. I attended quite a bit of training last month. Fortunately, that's all online training, so I can do it in my office. But again, all requirements that we need to meet as far as the Police Safety Act. We attended, Dave and the mayor and I attended the McLean County Disaster Council meeting. And we'll attempt to always attend those meetings. It's great that we can work with them and partner with them. And of course, we did the trunk or treat. You can see that in there. As Denny said, it was a success. It wasn't perfect weather, but we had a lot of trunk or treaters come out. And I agree with the mayor that probably the best display was the donut eating cop. I think that was rather unique. And I attended the St. Jude fundraising planning meeting again, as you can see. Halloween, both Chris and I worked, of course, Halloween night. No problems, no concerns. I was very surprised at the amount of trick-or-treaters because it was pretty cold, but there was a lot of people out for Halloween, and everybody stayed safe. We didn't have any calls for service during that time period at all. So, and then one thing I didn't put on there, and Kevin and I talked about it before the meeting, I forgot to mention that we did complete the siding repair on the perimeter of the police building. So that is completed, where they cut up 2 inches, replaced, put like a flashing behind that, and then it almost looks like a railing underneath it, so that now when it rains, water will wash away, won't build up and create the rust issues that we're having. Now, next year, we'll have to budget to have entire building painted, except for the roof, which is brand new, but it'll have to be completely repainted, so. And then the streetlight report, good news, bad news about that, no new street lights were burned out. However, they're still burned out. So we will again send a message to Ameren, reminding them that we need to get those repaired. I imagine that one of the reasons, and I don't know this for sure, but I assume that it takes them a little bit longer to do it now, because when they come out, it's not just replacing a bulb like they used to be, they're converting to LEDs. So it's a little bit, it's much more major. They have to put a cold control unit on it and do some rewiring and everything. Good thing about that is when they finally get all of our lights to LED, they're gonna last for a long, long time. So anyway, so that's the bond that we have, and I charge them every month, so. That's pretty much it, unless anybody has any questions.
Did you buy body cameras? We approved that, right? Is that?
Yes.
That's going through or purchasing those?
Yes, we have the body cameras, they're ready to go, except that we bought the system that syncs with the squad cars. So Axon, and we're gonna get the Axon camera system probably later this month or early in December. They'll come out and install all that, and then we'll actually put them into service.
Any more questions for Mark? Not, thank you. Excellent job with Halloween.
Yeah.
Thank you.
National Civil Defense Director Jeff, who's not here, did all the sirens go off today?
They went off at 11.
Well, they actually went off twice. The actual siren that is the monthly siren test was at 10 o'clock. The noon siren, that wasn't on time because I think the clock hasn't been reset for that. I don't know how that's done or who does that, but the actual one for the weather service has done anything. That did go off. So that's why you heard 10 and then all of a sudden 11 again. I'm like, what's going on?
Danny, can you take care of getting the new Russell coordination to get it back to noon?
Yeah, that's my delinquency, as I haven't been here much the last 2 days.
Thank you, Danny. All right, reports of standing committees, we go to trustees, finance, budget, contracts, and employees. Lynn.
Yeah, my first one. We'll get to the employment. I have one that's not on the agenda, so hopefully we can talk about it. Was the TIF restructuring request from Nice. Am I allowed to, Tara's here, I think she was gonna talk in the citizens hearing, but she didn't get here and sign everything. Can I ask her to, or do I have to have that on the
Yeah,
agenda?
no, that's okay. You can ask her.
Sarah, would you like to just update everybody on the restructuring request?
So first off, we just want to say thank you for your support.
Can you turn the PA on, please?
Just tap it, right?
There's a button at the bottom, just hit, thank you.
First off, we just want to say that we really appreciate you guys' support and your generous offer. Just wanted to update you guys on a couple things. So when I first submitted the TIF application, the public infrastructure was significantly less than what it ended up being. There were certain requirements that we were not made aware of until after the fact, including concrete culverts and a retention pond. That increased our cost from what we thought was $15,000 to $50,000.
The retention pond.
Oh,
She's
we're
put
done.
one in, so
Yeah.
at least one more.
You wanna borrow it? So we basically eaten up our entire contingency budget. We've had to go back to the SBA and, get, additional financing to cover the 50,000. Doing so, the bank and SBA is highly recommending and pushing me to increase the weekly daycare costs. And I'm a little bit reluctant to do that just because I don't wanna put that burden on, parents, with the increased costs. Daycare as it is already super, super expensive and parents have a hard time paying for it as it is. And increasing it anymore, would increase it to almost be like a second mortgage payment. Most parents can't afford that. So we were, asking that if you guys would be willing to restructure the TIF. We're not asking for any additional funds or any more money. We, would just ask that, for a larger lump sum and a decrease in the percentage, in the rebate. And so, in the next 11 years, we'll be paying on that, and it's basically based off of the appraisal of the building. So, I think we'll probably be at 750,000. So that will be replenished into the TIF funds over the next 11 years. This would just help us get started right off the bat without having to increase our costs to where it's unaffordable for parents.
And I think, I've kind of like talked with people too, and I think this is, to me, I think this is the sort of project that I think of all the things that are discussed as potentially for TIF, eligibility. It's something that benefits the community in general. We just heard about how we really need to work more, retention basins into, our grand, planning. And so rather than dump that burden on anyone who wants to build anything from here on out, I just think it makes sense.
And that was kind of like the, conversation that went on with our civil engineer and, Hudson civil engineer, was that because everything around us has built up, and there's so many flat surfaces, like, library has a parking lot, everyone has a parking lot. It became an issue when I wanted to build, that something else had to be done for the drainage. And it's quite a big retention basin. I don't know if there's any way that the village would want to utilize that in some other way, you're welcome to. But it is like half the size of our building, like that's how large it is. It's like 20 feet by 40 feet, and our building's only 40 by 80. So it's about half the size of our building.
So, but, she's worried about, the cost, that she's able to offer the service to parents for. And like, to me, I understand why it's a priority for her. But like, to me, it's really, the more and more of these financial burdens you pile on, it eventually affects the financial viability of her business as a whole. And so that's more my concern. It's not necessarily, what the cost is to an individual parent, but it's just, to me, it's like, okay, at what point, do these mounting costs and things, so that's my concern. So that just helps, her to not, basically, it's an additional interest expense that, just as a drain on the funds that she has. So if you'd be at least open to a discussion about just restructuring the way that we would
So if I can interrupt real quick, so right now you're asking for 100,000 and you're asking for like 20,000 up front, correct?
No,
Oh, no.
No, so the,
Was that a different one?
so I believe, so it's, there's 11 years left on it, so, and I've tried to actually run an estimate, but, on what her tax will actually be, and I've gotten a couple different things from the assessors, that came with totally different answers, or, end results, so I haven't nailed down exactly how that works yet, but, so there's 11 years left on this. Would be up to the 100,000. More than likely, it wouldn't reach that, just based on the time and the numbers that we're talking about. But that would be dependent. So like, the only way is if, her tax burden is 25,000 a year, then 50% would be rebated back to her. And there's 11 years left. So in that particular example, it could potentially reach
What we're saying,
that.
we would
What-
be
So
okay with
instead of
less than
50,
50%.
yeah.
Even if it was 5%.
Yeah, so just we would talk and figure out what that is. I mean, we wanted to just open a conversation and potentially negotiation
The
to.
number we were asking for would be the 50,000 to cover the public infrastructure, which was the concrete culverts.
Yeah.
The right-of-way drives, basically all the expenses that were incurred on the village property,
Right.
as well as
Right,
the,
I thought, correct me, I thought, going back to the original TIF, right, just so that we know what was before, that it was 20,000 upfront.
Yeah.
And the remaining 80,000, up to the maximum 100,000 would be rebated
Yes,
on property tax. So what
Correct.
you're saying is you want how much upfront?
50,
50, and then the remaining 50 be,
yes.
yes.
that's fine, I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean,
And
that seems reasonable.
And I
for their
think Kevin,
cost.
you or Joe, I can't remember, and some of these things I've listened to online and it's very hard sometimes to listen to, but somebody said, where did this number come from? And I went back and this was actually something Kathy that was, you and
The
Tara
public
talking about.
infrastructure.
And we were kind of just trying, we didn't know exactly,
Estimate from
the
Economic Development Corporation.
yes. Plus the 5,000 for utility hookups, I believe.
No,
It was the public
Didn't
infrastructure, that's
5,000?
where the number came from.
that has nothing to do with it. It was 20,000 plus 50%.
No, that where did the
We
20,000?
estimated what the property taxes would be, and it was a 50% of the property taxes.
Where the 20,000 came from,
No, the 20,000 was,
which is in addition
Sure.
to.
right, it was 20,000 for structure, not the building.
Yeah.
For,
Public infrastructure,
for the infrastructure,
yeah, infrastructure.
as in
Yeah.
parking lot and
Yeah.
things in this order. And
So
then-
this actually, that number does, that 50,000 does not include the parking lot at all. I separated that out, and we're
Yeah.
paying for that, that's like separate.
So what I'm gonna do now is I will this month get a hold of Gwen, look at what it takes to restructure it. And then I'll send an email to everybody, kind of with an update on what that might look like, and then we can discuss and vote on it in the next meeting. I just wanted them to come in
Yeah,
to
Thank
be
you.
able to
Yeah, thank you.
reiterate what was going on.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you guys introduce yourselves as a
Oh.
new member of the board? I don't know
Oh,
who you are, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I'm Kara Graff.
Thank you,
Mac Rector.
thank
We
you.
live
And what is your guys'
402
relation?
Southeast Street, and
Are you
Tara,
guys a couple, is that, are you guys
Yeah.
both in on this business? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tara owns the business.
And
I had a question on the numbers that you mentioned. Did you say originally you thought it was gonna cost 15 and it ended up costing 50?
So the public infrastructure was 15, and then there was like 5,000 that was, I think, like,
I thought it was.
Denny's work, so it's like 20,000, that was the public infrastructure. The 15,000 was for the, and then it ended up being 50,000.
The 15,000 was for what?
Part of the public infrastructure, and then there was like 5,000 for like utilities or something of that nature.
So,
It's
so
in
what
the
did you
initial tip.
originally plan on it costing you? I thought that was 15,000. When you did all your financing calculations.
It was 15, yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so it ended up being 50.
50, yeah.
So the increase is 35,000 over what you originally planned on.
Correct.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay. But you're asking for the entire 50,000 upfront instead of just the $35,000 increase, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we ask questions or not?
Yeah.
So you mentioned, that the daycare is on behalf of the community. Do you have an approximation of how many community members would be sending their children to your daycare? Or are these children coming from outside communities and taking the
Both.
benefit of this nice building? Do you have like an approximation of what that would be? Is it 80% outside of the community, 20% inside the community?
I would say it's over half, I would say,
In the
because
community.
we're gonna be offering an after-school program as well.
So over half would be from our community and then the others would be outside of our community.
Yeah, I mean, there's really, like, legally speaking, you can't really say like, this is only for Hudson people.
I'm not disputing that. I guess what I'm saying is if we're gonna be concerned about the cost for our community as a board, we should consider the cost to our community, not the cost to the 12 communities around us with their budgets, right? So that's where I'm asking the question based off of that premise.
But if you think about it, so like for our community, it would almost be more beneficial to have people coming in from Bloomington and Normal and spending their money here at our local organizations, you know, like the Childers and, you know, the different businesses that we have here. And so offering it at a discounted rate, even to people that are not in our community, we're still gonna be benefiting from it because it's drawing people from the outside to go to Casey's and get gas and.
That's not true. I mean, but he's saying, we don't wanna like supplement the cost or be concerned about delivering the cheapest cost if it's not going to the people that live here, that's what he's saying.
Because it's the tax dollars from this community that's going to be used to supply you with this funds. I'm not saying I agree or disagree, I'm just asking the question if we know.
I mean, I know parents that are in Normal and they drive their kid to Hudson and they're wanting to move to Hudson because. It's
Absolutely,
just
absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying one way or
No, I'm
another
just
that
saying-
I'm too new to have an opinion on this topic, really, but I'm just asking some general questions. The next question that I have is, given the rest of those structures that you mentioned, the library, the other flat lands, that those were previously there, is there a reason why some of these costs weren't planned for? So the basin and things like that, why they weren't originally calculated into your?
Nobody really knew of them until we paid our $15,000 to have our civil engineer draw up the plans and to talk to Patrick. Because it's really not in the rule book, or not the rule book, the codes just specifically state, you know, the slope of the parking lot. I was talking to Denny back and forth about the requirements for the parking lot. And there really wasn't like anything to go off of. We didn't find out until after we had gone through this civil engineer process that these extra drainage things were required.
One of the big major costs is that they're requiring that the culverts be made of concrete. And so that like cost was like an increase of, and I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but like $3,000 per culvert. Then they're requiring that they have flares on the end. So then that's an extra 2,500. So when the fire station went in, they allowed them to use PVC culverts.
Or corrugated steel, I think it was.
Both of them would have been options, but the PVC, it would have saved approximately $4,500 per. And we have like, what, 5 or something culverts between the retention pond, the approaches.
Just two
So
of the
it's just like, okay, well, why and when, and that's not outlined in the code. And, you know, I think Denny has a pretty good, like, you know, grasp on what we like, you know, we expect and stuff. And what he came up with was, it's gonna be $15,000.
Sure.
What the engineers came back, and I think a lot of that is partially, you know, hey, we're getting maybe some of this feedback, we need to be worried about drainage. This is something that we've been neglecting. And so let's make sure that we don't say, I wish we would have made them do more. So, but I do think that, you know, because of that, maybe past inaction is putting a little bit of an undue burden on her when she's trying to do this too, maybe a little bit, so.
Okay, can you bring me up to speed? Because the last I heard that using the cement culverts was not a village or a village architect requirement. Village
It was
engineer
the civil
requirement.
engineer that required that,
Your civil engineer.
your civil engineer.
When I talked to him, he said it wasn't him.
But we can't talk to him, remember?
Yeah.
We tried to talk to him and we were told that we would have to pay 2,500 to ask him any question.
Yeah,
Okay.
So, and my question is, why do we choose this person to do business with if that's the way they do business? Because that's ridiculous, and quite frankly, there's a lot of questions that could be asked. These are ridiculous costs. Why should we have to pay them? And somebody should be able to answer that question without hiding behind the veil of, before asking that question or being forced to answer it, you have to pay us $2,500. That's my opinion.
I will double check with our engineer, because the last I heard, he was not the one that required that.
Well, and there must have been a miscommunication between the engineer, our engineer, Lanier, but that's what was told to
And
me
and
by my project manager.
Also, our project manager said explicitly that and apparently they had told you something different, but explicitly that that the requirement of us having to put in the drainage, having the larger and concrete culverts as well as the retention pond was a direct result of the neighboring properties. And he told you that that it was right, only the characteristics of our property, and therefore we were not absorbing a burden of any of the other surrounding properties. And I was like, well, and we clarified this with our project manager. He said explicitly, he told me that the surrounding properties directly contribute to the fact that this is required for your property explicitly. I can't be more clear about it. So I don't know if we're getting different things. It's hard for us to say because we only can get one side.
Okay, will you coordinate the activity for reviewing that again? Okay, thank you.
I do wanna ask one question, kind of different topic. I mean, you said something about a discounted rate, and you also said your financial people are saying you should charge more. I mean, and maybe you shouldn't answer this question, I don't know, but, I mean, are you gonna be charging about the same as like the big ones in town do? Or are you saying you're gonna be charging a lot less?
We're pretty close to that.
Okay, so you're on par with the industry?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We're just structuring it differently, so they're on a sliding scale, so they charge more for an infant than they would a 5-year-old. We just spread that out across 5 years.
Okay.
So that the infants don't have the undue burden of paying a higher childcare plus diapers plus formula. We just spread it out between 5 years.
I honestly just wanna make sure you weren't trying to charge half as much as in town.
No. Yeah.
Go ahead. Just one last question. You mentioned the financial viability of the business as a whole. If it was determined that we didn't want to restructure this TIF, would that mean you go under? Would that mean you would consider closing shop before you open? I mean, can you speak a little bit to that? I just want to understand the implications of what this would mean if it was decided against or for, just so that I have an understanding of that.
It's an additional,
Loan, high interest rate.
you know, it's, she has found a path to make it work, with the bank, and, you know, with, our resources that are available. And so we have a path forward. It's not a life or death moment. But
finances are very, very.
I'm starting to like, you know, I'm starting to just sweat a little bit. Things are starting to get a little tight. And I'll start to feel a lot better here in a few months when, you know, when we're, and when I say viability, I mean, obviously, I'm speaking in the aggregate, and, you know, every last dollar, it's a cumulative effect. And so, you know, she's in a healthy situation. It's, that's not my concern. It's, and I'm a very conservative person. And so I'm a little bit outside my comfort zone to begin with, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I want to say you have a beautiful building in the
Thank you.
works. It looks like it's making great progress, and
We
we're,
can't wait to show everyone around and show it off to everybody, and I think we're very happy with how it turned out, and I think it is something that.
you got a target opening yet?
Not a target opening, but we will be having an open house for the community to come check it out in December.
Great.
Sarah, I got a question or an explanation. When we had the initial TIF meeting, and Lynn was there, Dave was there, myself, and our TIF representative, that 20,000 was not set up just for infrastructure. 20,000 was pulled out of the air to give you money to work with for your construction costs. So it's not specifically for the infrastructure.
Okay.
So I think you're mistaken there as far as that's what that 20,000.
There's certain, I think, you can also speak to this too, there's only certain
I
things
think-
that it's eligible
You
for.
cannot use it for
Yeah.
new construction.
Yeah, you can't
For the
use it
new
for new
building.
construction.
So we were limited with the
Infrastructure
things
is
in
one of the
her.
categories that's,
Okay,
yeah.
So it's, so,
we didn't use the figure, just, you know, we pulled the 20,000 kind of out of the air. We weren't even talking about giving you any money up front. We were just gonna give you like a percentage back on your real estate tax.
well, was that was,
And the TIF agent told us that we could give a lump sum toward construction. And that's where we came up with the $20,000.
but you can't give a lump sum toward the construction. It was, right, it had to be toward infrastructure, and so the cost of the infrastructure, the portion that was eligible was 20,000. Does that make sense?
I have to look at
That's
the
a
wording.
coincidence.
Okay, maybe, right.
Because it wasn't, as far as I know, it wasn't restricted like that. The only major restriction was that you could not use it to build a building.
Right.
New buildings cannot.
And Kathy, they couldn't use it.
So the only two categories that we were able to use it for was like public infrastructure. The cost of land is one of them. And then, well, I don't know if parking lot's considered infrastructure, but anything existing, that's it. Nothing like the building can't be used, things like that can't be used in that.
Okay, that's kind of independent of what we're gonna be reviewing. We're just gonna be reviewing, changing it,
Changing
so.
it.
We were trying to avoid that because.
We just look at the wording and see what.
It wasn't just set up to be
I know,
construction.
right.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the.
Can you just contribute a detail
I think a lot of
bill of some sort that outlines?
She was gonna send an email to everybody, so she has some, I should put that on.
You have a copy of the TIF ordinance or the daycare?
I have it in the office, it was
She's
waiting to
got
be
it.
signed, so
Can
I've
you
got it, I
print
can
a copy?
scan it to
You can
everybody.
Scan that and send it to everybody, so
Sure,
they'll have a
yeah,
chance to look at it again.
Or is it just, I think they're, okay.
One last quick question, you can just shout the answer. How many parking spaces do you have in the lot, do you know, off the top of your head?
20, I counted them yesterday.
20?
Yeah.
Okay, Lynn,
Yeah.
what's your next item?
Yeah, my next item was the employee handbook, which you are gonna be way out of the loop on this one. So, yeah, questions, just ask. We've been working on it for a long time. I only got a response back from Kevin of any additional questions of the changes, the last minute changes we were gonna make to it. They kind of all made sense. The due process one was the big one. Because we're an at-will state, we've been due process, we're at will currently. We kind of want to go back to due process because we do have a due process anyway. It's situational, but it's not like spelled out, but it does, I think it supports our employees a little bit better. Pat, we can technically go back to a due process, right? Because it's a less.
I would strongly advise against it. I've never had an employer voluntarily do that. It was generally considered a misstep to have done it previously. So yes, you can, but no, you should not, in my opinion.
I think wording then that's in there, is there a way that we can word it and, because I feel like we still do have a due process. There's a concern with employees of that, like, for termination of employment, say they make a trustee, they rub a trustee the wrong way, and the trustee's out to get them, and they could just fire them at will.
But they can't, that's why
They
there's six,
can't,
that's
that's
why
what
there's
I'm
six
saying.
trustees.
There is a due like, that's
Well,
kind of like a
but one
due
trustee can't fire trustees.
No, but we can, like, I think there's a
If you-
concern that you can plant the seed and then like,
Yeah, if you upset 3 trustees, then yeah, you're in trouble, but I mean.
right,
Okay, the other side is if you run out of work for an individual
mhm,
and you don't have any work for them to do, so can they claim a due process claim against the village? If we wanna just terminate them?
right, exactly.
I mean, that's a consideration.
Mhm. If we stay at will,
If we say, yeah,
yeah,
either, yeah. I think That was why we switched to at will. One of the reasons, because everything used to be due process.
Right?
Has the insurance company's attorney been working with you on this, Lynn?
OKGC
Yeah, they're
has been working with us on it.
Okay. Jane, so I know Jane May had worked with me in the past. The history of it is we have some employees who are hired under the old manual who are grandfathered under that. And then, from an employer standpoint, your rights are generally employee handbooks are written to protect the interest of the employer, and your rights are more broad, and with at-will employment. And it's the same, from an employee standpoint, everywhere is at will. So it's not any worse arrangement for the employee than if they left and went to work for, XYZ Incorporated.
Grandfathered in, like, if you're changing a manual, because that's what they were hired at, because there's other things in the manual too that we have to leave it as what you were hired in at. So that means we're kind of operating under two manuals for the time being that those employees are with us. That's normal?
Yeah, well, it's not. I have very rarely run into a municipality that's ever had a handbook that gave due process rights to the employee on termination. So it's not super customary that we have all these grandfather provisions, but it is occasionally the case. So yeah, that is an anomaly, not super common that you guys have where some under a different set of rules or sections of a prior set of rules.
Okay, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, for an employee to be terminated, there have to be at least a majority of the trustees vote to terminate the employee. Is that correct?
Part of it depends on who the employee is. So many of your employees are officers of the village. So there's a process for like appointive officers for their termination. And that is different than just a regular employee. So if you wanted to terminate Chief Cotty or Sarah as example, those both being appointed employees, the mayor removes the employee, reports charges to the board. The board can override the mayor at a subsequent public meeting. For employees like a water assistant, it's generally a mayor executive branch function to manage and oversee those employees with advice from the board. So board action obviously would require majority vote, but generally a decision to fire an individual employee isn't a legislative branch function, so board, it would be executive branch function, so mayor.
I think this has been the sticking point.
But what came highlighted, as I thought what we were saying, we were gonna go to it, and that's that's leaving them at will, right?
It was something Matt will until last minute. It was a concern and a suggestion, so I said, we'll talk about it again.
Okay.
So the handbook that has the highlighted at will is the change that we want to make, but that's different from what Pat says, correct? Or is that?
That was the change that was suggested.
But Pat disagrees with that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I think the part that's highlighted is actually at will that came from Jane.
Is it? I
And
can't
you would-
access
So that is actually what came from Jane.
That's what
And we
we,
just highlighted it because you had said an employee had mentioned you, they didn't like that idea.
okay,
And so you were gonna look into it, but what is highlighted is what came from Jane.
it's what's
And
in
it is
there.
at will as it
Currently.
should be
Okay.
according to what Pat is telling us.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's currently at will in there. All the other changes are made. So if we say no due process, we gotta leave it at will, because that's the advice of the attorney.
Yeah.
In your current manuals, my recollection of your current manual is it's at will. You'd have to go back to the manual before the current manual. And the current manual I gave some professional attention to when I first started. I think I worked with like Caleb Post, so it would have been 6 years ago.
So if we are in agreement to leave it at will, we are ready. There's no other suggestions, questions, or changes that need to be made. We're ready to vote on it currently.
Okay, so the personal time, the one you sent out had 3 days, I think.
That was changed to 6, that was adjusted to 6, so everyone got sent a new one, the last 2 that everybody got was 6, I believe. At least this last current one, Sarah sent one today. So it's currently 6.
Here, can I abstain from a vote or sit out a vote? Is there a process that you can always use? Just abstain, I abstain, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's currently all the fixes and changes are in the current one that I sent out today, and I think the last revised copy that I sent before the last meeting, before these questions came up. It will, again, right, Pat, in like January, when we get the new terminology for the vacation time for part-time employees, it will have to be reviewed again and changed, correct?
Yeah, and there was some guidance that came out last week, and I haven't dug into it, but there was some guidance that came out last week from the Municipal League that has some bearing on that Paid Leave for All Act. So I think that whether there was some discussion about whether municipalities be carved out, and then I think the Municipal League has a model ordinance related to that. So yeah, you're correct that new law starts January 1st. There are some wheels in motion about how that will affect you. Some of those I'm looking into, or will be looking into, and so there will be action one way or the other needed on that on or before the first of the year.
I calendared to review it again in January, once we know for sure how it's gonna affect us. And then if this is actually something that we have to review yearly based on a lot of changes that are getting made on a regular basis, so.
The January change could just be adding the section for
Yeah,
pay time off or part-time.
yeah, it just
employees.
depends on what they finalize for municipalities. Any
Are
other?
there any other questions or discussion on the changes to the HR manual?
So are you making sure that I ask this again, Lem? So basically the last one that we received that's highlighted,
Yes,
these are actually consistent with what Pat
yes,
determines at will, correct?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Should be the last time.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, I would like to make a motion to vote on the updated changes to the current employee handbook.
I'll second.
Motion a second to apply all the updates to the employee manual. Any final questions or discussion? Not, Allison, roll call.
Bill Boyd,
Yes.
Kevin Kelly.
Yes.
Bill Morris,
Yes.
Lynn Norris,
Yes,
Mitchell, as you say, Tilkey.
Tilkey, yeah. Abstain.
Okay, and when you get time, go ahead and work with Mitchell and just kind of fill him in on it, so.
send you a copy. Pat, I have one more question, about our purchasing policy manual. I remember we voted on it a couple years ago. Is it an ordinance or is it an actual manual?
Well, the village at one point in time had like a procurement manual, and I suggested that that wasn't customary for municipalities of your size. Rather, oftentimes we just see a spending policy, which is a more concise document, which is adopted by board vote. It's the spending policy, and I can check my records. The spending policies that I am accustomed to seeing are a 2 or 3 page document, which would be approved by board vote, but the spending policy itself is laid out as a separate freestanding instrument, not incorporated into an ordinance. And a lot of times I have shared, and I don't remember specifically with you, it's an issue I've covered with a lot of municipalities. I'll check my records and share with you what I have on that.
And we'll check again too on our end, but it's not a good thing to say that we cannot remember what we did.
Yeah, I've been
And
looking for purchasing, not
yeah.
procurement, so.
Yeah, and I remember it was referenced not too long ago because of Sarah's, when we were talking about concession stand, what Sarah was able to do on her own.
As I'm sitting here, I pulled up just visually what I have. It looks like the date I drafted it was May 4th, 2021. There was an ordinance which wouldn't go into your code, of freestanding ordinance. And then the policy was attached. So I don't have signed copies of it. But if you're looking back at your records, maybe put a laser on the May or June 2021 meetings.
I'll do that, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, that's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Does anybody have any questions for Lynn? Now, we'll move on to streets, Bill.
I have no business tonight.
Okay, next is ordinance and zoning, and Mitchell, we obviously don't expect anything. We welcome
Nothing
you
for me
in.
tonight.
So, all right, we'll go ahead and move on to police department. Kevin?
Yeah, have a few things. One thing that Mark and I talked about, he thought it was an okay idea, is a creation of a pedestrian crosswalk at Friendship Park. There's nothing there. It would be, I think it'd be good to have that, location. I guess, I know I don't expect it to be painted or anything now in November, December maybe, but if that's something that, could be done maybe in the spring or next year.
Maybe can you add that sidewalk to potential sidewalk projects? See where it falls out with the motor fuel tax stuff and everything else you got? And then we'll see where we're at with it.
And then, on that note too, there was also like, I know I was kind of going through this Village of Hudson plan, and I didn't put it on the agenda, but just as a side note, we don't talk about it, but just a side note, we don't have any connection through the north part of town, like, by sidewalks that route to maybe connect to the center part of town. So everything kind of stops at the north end. So I was thinking maybe taking it down North Washington to, I think, Walnut to cross over where the four-way stop is, possibly there.
That's something that I think maybe when you were on the board before, possibly, that we had got a grant for, and then they ended up not giving us the money, so we didn't pursue safe routes to school or something
Yeah,
like that.
we got that grant, it was like a $25,000 grant. And as soon as they gave us like $6,000 in the beginning, and then it instantly froze all the funds, we couldn't use any of the funds, and we had to
Okay.
return them all, so.
Okay, so it was in the works, but then.
It was in the works, we had a
Okay.
grant that we got approved for and everything, and then it just got
And,
stopped.
and I'm just kind of highlighting some of like what the planning commission did on that official Village of Hudson plan that we approved. And it says determined sidewalk work were needed. So I know you already did lots down to the Dollar General, but I think that might be a stretch there that we could utilize. But I don't have it on our agenda, so I don't want to talk, but I want to kind of put that out there, just to think about. Just going through the next, Mark mentioned about the streetlight reporting update. I appreciate Mark doing that on a monthly basis, reporting that. Kind of keeps things, especially since it takes longer for the lights to be replaced. I think that's a good thing. The other item I think I will talk about is the investment report that Sarah has done. She did a 6-month report, and kind of as interest she's accrued, and we talked about that a little bit for funding the consultant or the contractor, but you just want to kind of say something about this, how much interest, I mean,
Yeah,
is this interest that you have on this report, is that just CD interest, or is that everything?
that's CD, right there,
Okay.
you see total interest reinvested as of October 31st. That's just interest from those 3 CDs that matured, back in August. We have 3 more coming due on November 23rd. As of right now, 6 months just from those 3 CDs maturing, we've got $8,131.22 that's come in. Just to give you an idea of the difference in the investing that's been made. Last year, the total interest off of just CDs in fiscal year 23 was $1,310.53. So we're above and beyond.
We didn't put that in our budget as income, did we? We did not, yeah.
We don't, yeah,
That-
no,
that
it's
pays
not
the IT
budgeted at all.
stuff, hopefully, yeah.
How do we get it to $2 million?
Well, I don't know. That seems like something for you to work on.
Have it?
Washington.
Talk to our local bank.
Go see
See
Carol.
that.
So yeah,
No, but I think that's, I mean, seriously, I think they're very competitive, they might not give us the highest rate, but it's very competitive.
they
I
work
mean,
well with
local
us.
here, I think Carol has done a great job for us, I
Yeah.
believe. Thank you, Sarah.
Sure. I also would say the 3 that are coming due in November, my recommendation would be, they have a special rate at 9 months, that I sent out in that email, which would keep us on track for every 3 months having CDs maturing, which has worked out well this year, I feel like, so that would be my recommendation, if everybody would be okay with me doing that.
Yep.
Okay.
And just kind of, then the other thing, what kind of surprised me last December when we had to vote for that property tax increase last year. And I don't think we had any data, we just kind of, I think what we did the 4.9% increase under the 5% to do that. So I asked Sarah to provide me what the last, I think she gave me 6 years worth of data. And it looks like it was 4.9% every year except 1 year where it was 0.5%. And the last 2 years, it was another 5% and 4.6% increase. So I think going into I think we have to do this December, right?
Yeah, Pat's preparing it for us.
So we have to vote for on December to do that? Just have maybe some idea, I mean, I don't mind voting whatever way, but just having an idea, why are we voting? Why are we increasing it the max amount? Because when I look at it, you know, I talked to Mark about this, having a plan, you know, and kind of going from there, so you kind of know. And I talked to Denny, what is his plan going forward and what type of projects we have. We have tons on that. The planning commission advised to us that we agreed to, like water main lines, repair, things like that. So I think it would behoove us to at least kind of figure out what we want to do in the next year. Well, go ahead. Joe.
Yeah, so Pat can correct me if I'm wrong, but, so I think what I remember from the discussion last time was that the rate we choose, whatever we pick, doesn't change at all what people will pay. It's, if we don't take it, someone else, some other body gets it, is that true, Pat?
Well, yeah, let me clarify that slightly. So a couple points. One, the 5% number is significant because if you go over a 5% increase in your levy request as compared to what you actually got last year in property taxes, then you have to do a public hearing. At the public hearing, people can come and say whatever they'd like to say, then you can still adopt the levy, so it doesn't trigger a referendum or anything like that, but it does trigger a public hearing. This year, your assessments are up by more than 5%. So what that means is if you make, and I don't have your extension sheet in front of me, but I know, Kevin, you mentioned last month, and you may have that handy, but I in many communities, I'm seeing 7% give or take increase in assessments. So, pardon me?
Yeah. It was a 7% increase in assessment.
So if you ask the formula for what you receive is your tax base, so the total of property tax assessments within the village that you impose tax on multiplied by a rate equals the dollars that you actually receive. We are not in control of the assessment that's set by the township assessor, subject to border review and PTAB proceedings. What we submit is the number over here, the levy request. So we say, this is the total number of dollars we want to receive out of the 2023 property tax bills payable in 2024. And what the county does is they say this number is fixed, set by the assessor. This number is fixed, that's set by the village. So we're going to back into the math to figure out what the rate is. If the assessments go up 7%, and if your levy goes up 5%, your rate has gone down the 2%, give or take, in order for the math to work. So you're uniquely able this year, as compared to many prior years, to increase the full 5% over here with your rate still going down. So in a relative sense, if I own a home that is worth the same amount January 1st of 23, in the assessor's eyes, as it was worth on January 1 of 22, the taxes I pay to the village of Hudson will actually decrease on the 23 tax bill as compared to 22.
Say that last sentence again, Pat.
I own I'll restate it slightly for clarity. If I own a home worth $100,000 and my assessment has not increased, so the home was worth $100,000 January 1 of 2022, and the home's worth $100,000 January 1 of 2023. If the village increases its levy request by 5%, my taxes will go down, because the rate will have to go down because the assessment's up 7%. We want the total of the formula to go up 5%, so that rate's got to be less than last year for the levy math to work out. So you're uniquely able to increase your levy by 5% without increasing your portion of the rate at all. Now, the rate that your residents pay is a factor of every taxing body's levy request. So Unit 5 does a levy request that looks at their assessment and looks at their number they desire over here, and the county figures their rate. And Hudson Township and Hudson Water Authority and Hudson Road District, and all of those individual taxing bodies do the same process. We can only control the village's line item on the tax bill. Just because your rate may go down doesn't mean tax bills will go down for everybody.
But if we vote the 4.9% increase that we normally do, the Hudson tax portion of the bill will actually go up regardless of assessed values.
The Hudson tax rate will go down.
Rate will go down, but the dollars that we pay goes up.
Your levy request over here is what the county's going to get for you. So you're assured when you make your levy request that you're going to get those dollars. So yes, the total dollars you receive will go up by 4.9%, but those dollars will go up essentially entirely funded out of new assessment, whether that's my home is worth more than it used to be, or whether that's I built something new in Hudson this year.
And all I'm kind of saying, so we requested 138,690 last year as the request. What do we need this year for next year's budget? Do we need the 4.9, 1, 3?
So do you want to give your employees pay increases? How much is IML going to go up? Retirement costs, those are all different things that come out of the tax revenue that we get.
Right.
So-
I mean, and I know that this is a bad thing to say, is that with the sales tax, we don't have a sales tax. So right now is that what our philosophy is, we're talking about sewer, we're talking about these other entities building things. So we're having, my philosophy is we're having the residents pay for these things and being taxed on this. So it's like, okay, do we do a 0.25%, 0.5% sales tax so we can offset some of the costs? So otherwise, every year it's 4.9% on the homeowners. And I'm just saying, nobody likes taxes, right? I mean, I don't like taxes, but when I'm voting for something, I want to make sure that, A, what do we need? we have our investment report, we know what we're getting for interest, what we have invested. Currently, we have in general fund 821,000 currently, along with the other funds. What do we need for? I don't know the answer to that, but I just wanted to talk about it in November before the December vote, before we go in there and saying, oh, well, we have to do it by the end of the meeting. We have to do it. So that's that.
Just two points, if I may there. One, your deadline to adopt and file the levy is the last Tuesday in December. So you have this year until December 26th to adopt and file. I understand that you only have one regular meeting in December, but just being hyper precise there. On the sales tax, I'm looking it up, but I believe you are already collecting at your maximum sales tax rate that is available to you without the initiation of a referendum. So that's one difference as between the viability of raising taxes versus sales tax as compared to the property tax.
So we can put two things on the referendum then.
The sales tax is not advisory. That would be a binding one.
The other thing that we have is, back to police, we had, I believe, 18 applicants for the part-time police position. So on that, we have 2 full-time officers during day. We're looking for that, just for Mitchell's sake, we're looking for a officer to work from 6 to midnight on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturday nights, so that we could get some additional police presence there. There's some residents that want that. I think personally, I would like that, that additional police presence. However, of the 18 applicants, only one was qualified to have the state certification. Is that correct?
Right, we required that they were state certified.
Certified.
We had one applicant.
One applicant, and then that applicant, you talked to that person and he was hired in El Paso full-time.
Correct.
So basically we have 0. So then
However, as an update to that, if I may.
Sure,
do an update.
sure.
I did talk to a part-time officer that is interested in working at Hudson. However, wouldn't be able to work all of those days and hours because they have a full-time job. And they're also already working part-time in another small community. So they're state certified. I encourage the officer to go ahead and fill out an EED application. So hopefully the officer does that, and then we can sit down and talk about, okay, maybe they can't work all these hours, but they can work some. So we may see that application come down.
Okay, so how long ago was that?
I talked to the officer last week and I sent an email, follow-up yesterday. And the officer said that they would go ahead and do an EED application.
Okay.
So we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Okay, thank you for the update. So besides that applicant, possibly, we've discussed possibly subcontracting the police for, and again, I want to clarify this is not the police department, is for that evening position to maybe get another department to work those hours in the evening. And Mark reached out to the McLean County and we talked with the mayor. It was prohibitively expensive. It would only get us through maybe, I think 12 or 13 weeks based upon our $22,000 we had budgeted for that part-time officer. So, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but you reached out to other local departments and they were reluctant to have somebody of their department work evenings with an existing department.
Yes,
Correct.
yeah, so it was the two things, one, contract with the county was cost prohibitive, just one. And so the other, small towns, oh, and by the way, Norma and Bloomington will not allow their officers to work as a police officer anywhere else, so that's discounted. The other small towns, if they only contract with other small towns that do not have a police department. Because if you already have a police department, you run into issues about, okay, who are they gonna report to? And the chain of command issues, and they just simply were like, well, we just don't do that. If you need, feel free to talk to any of our officers that work for us part-time and see if they wanna come work for you part-time. I think one of the issues that we had, we're trying to find a part-time officer to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, every Wednesday, Thursday, the way we advertised it, looking back.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Sorry, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, is that we advertised the position that you had to work, that we're working Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And we're only looking at hiring one. Well, you know, and talking to some of the other rural chiefs are like, well, you just put yourself into a funnel. And it's gonna be really hard for you to find that one person that wants to do that. Most of the small towns, when they're looking for part-time officers, just say, we're looking for a part-time officer. And then part of the selection process is they talk about hours and work schedules and everything else. Because most part-time officers are working full-time somewhere else. Some of them work for State Farm, some of them are working for country companies, some of them are probation officers that just happen to be part-time. So we kind of limited ourselves the way that we structured this. And I know we didn't want to have more than one part-timer because we didn't want to run into union issues.
I think that's incorrect though, Mark, because I wrote that ad and I said, even if you couldn't work all those hours and all those days, still apply. To do that. So like, so I kind of made it clear that, hey, even if they could work a Friday night or a Saturday or Friday or Thursday, they could still do that.
It's not that, it's just like on the ad in big bold letters. It said you gotta have a
police certification and how many.
That didn't, so they didn't read deep into the ad. So I think though, we may be able to deal with, filling some of these slots with this other officer that they want to work for us.
Okay.
So I think that we'll be able to at least progress forward in some fashion, but the subcontracting is just not an option.
Okay, thank you. So we've been looking, the other part for Mitchell's, we've been looking since August for this. So we've had, I mean, it's been,
People covering our shifts when we don't have officers on are the county, correct?
Right.
If we don't have a police officer on, McLean County is responsible for responding to our town.
Yes, they respond to emergency calls. So, and that's true of any small town, because most of the small towns do not have 24/7 coverage.
Right.
They don't. So the county responds and they'll respond, but they won't, of course, they can't do any ordinance enforcement whatsoever.
Sure.
And nuisance calls, probably not gonna be able to show up for that because they're very busy.
And
so emergency calls, though, they would.
And Chief, so I have prior law enforcement experience, as I'm sure you know, but given the hours that are probably more populated when it comes to enforcement activity from a police officer's perspective, there's a reason why a lot of these departments put certain officers on Mondays and Tuesdays off, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays versus Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, right?
Correct.
Is there a reason why Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the shifts that we do not have covered versus a different shift? And then
the main reason is you have two officers that work for them. And the job of police chief is about 50% administrative, whether it's a 2-man department or a 20-man department, it won't matter. Same reports have to be filed, same things have to be done from an administrative standpoint. Based upon that, I have 20 hours of overlap with the officer that currently works Officer Lane.
Yeah.
So I work 7 to 3 with Saturday, Sunday. And Officer Lane works 10 to 6 with Sunday, Monday as days off. The lightest 2 days I call Sunday. So during the course of that week, there's a 20-hour overlap, so I can not have to go out and answer calls and things like that to get the administrative things done. So that's how we structured it, and that's what we don't have anybody. Also, we wanted to have the call volume on our department is higher during the day than the other time. It just is. And I think that's because businesses are open, school is open, and some other things like that. The evening hours are not really, I didn't want someone to answer calls. It was more of a proactive. It'd be nice to have someone make a proactive aspect.
So that was gonna be my next question is,
Yeah.
if all of what you just said, what's the need there, right?
Yeah,
So,
just
okay,
yeah, proactive. Because really, when you look at the call volume, the county isn't coming into town at night very often at all. I mean, they drive through, okay, because they
Sure.
they try to drive through every small town during their shift. But they're not answering calls. So the call volume is not more of a proactive, just being visible and that type of thing.
That's all I have.
Okay, Kevin, I apologize, I misunderstood your first topic on the Friendship Park. What it says here is a pedestrian crosswalk, and I thought we were looking at a new sidewalk, so I misunderstood. Assume you just want a crosswalk to go across the street by the park?
Yes,
Okay, so that's totally different, so what I
yeah,
asked about putting it on Denny's list
yeah.
is totally irrelevant, so.
Well,
Anything-
I think for painting, the crosswalk would be on Denny's list. If I'm
Yeah,
painting it, right?
Yeah, I think that there probably would have to be, like a ramp off of the sidewalk that would point toward the park. Because right now, if I can picture it in my head, it's on the east side of Tremor. And, there's nothing on the west side of Tremor and nothing on the south side of Pettit that wraps
Right,
around that direction. So there at that intersection, there would have to be a ADA ramp cut in on that side, because I don't think I'd have to look at it.
There is, oh, no, there isn't, it is a curve. You're right, there's a curve there.
If there is a ramp, it's facing, I think, south, but
Yeah,
so there might have to be a little bit of sidewalk work, back to what you said, Dave, as well as maybe something
and signage,
done
maybe,
there at the park,
signs
but.
for that too.
Yeah, and you probably want to put a sign that says crosswalk.
It's kind of a blind corner right there,
Mhm.
and I've been seeing a lot of kids going back and forth, and, you know, it's just, it shouldn't be a crosswalk in front of a park.
anything else, Kevin?
No,
Okay, next is water, Joe.
I just want to thank Danny again. I mean, he detailed all the work on fixing that leak, but the thing that I want to thank you for is realizing there was a leak. Him and Sarah both right there watching these numbers. I don't think our previous water operator was doing this sort of stuff. So especially as a taxpayer, thank you for sending us money, Danny and Carol, and noticing that we're losing tens of thousands of gallons of water and going and finding the leak. Because you could easily ignore that and not do anything like the previous water operator. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Aaron's not here. Denny, were you aware of anything Aaron was gonna bring up?
I don't think so.
Okay, then we'll move on to the electric commissioner, and I have nothing for tonight. We have no business for closed session, so if anybody has any other business, now's a good time to bring it up.
Did we need to talk about the money for the,
Oh, yeah, the vote for the,
yeah,
yes,
you can't vote on it, 'cause it's not on the agenda, right?
It's on the budget, but not on the agenda. Pat, can we vote on it?
You cannot vote on it. You can discuss it, you can express consensus, you can put it on next month's bill run and pay it then. You can't vote on it tonight because it's not on the agenda.
Holly Jolly.
The $500
If
for
it's in the
Holly
budget,
Jolly.
why isn't it already approved?
It's on the agenda, but it still has to be,
I think we
I'm
just
sorry,
put
it's
it
on
in
the
for it.
budget, but we still gotta vote on it to pay it.
Yeah.
But if it's a line item in the budget, we approved the budget, isn't it already approved?
Pat, did you hear Joe's question?
No, it's not approved. That just means you're allowing yourself the ability to spend those funds. It's not a commitment. By putting it in a budget isn't a commitment that, yes, we are absolutely going to do that. It just says we are allocating money if we choose to do that. It's the board action to write the check or approve writing the check or ratifying the fact the check was written after the fact that actually authorized the expenditure. That says, yes, we are doing this.
Okay, so every month when we vote on the consent agenda, we're voting to approve all the other spending line items. That's, okay, I get it.
Hey, Pat, I have a question on that 500 that I listened to as a civilian. Now that I'm on the board, I have a few questions. Who would get the tax benefit from the charitable donation for that 500 that we would be giving to Holly Jolly? They would be then donating. Would that be the Holly Jolly folks that would get that tax benefit, or would that be the town of Hudson?
Yeah, the village doesn't pay tax, so we don't get any benefit from a transfer of funds. We don't get any, there's not a benefit like private citizen or corporation would to making a donation. Technically, we like to call it grants from the village as opposed to a donation, but yeah, if we grant money to Holly Jolly Hudson, if they put it in their coffers, if they operate at a wash and then they have the money we gave them left at the end of the year after cash flow equalizes and they give that money away, depending on the organizational structure of it, that organization would get the benefit. Now, you know, I don't know any of the details of the structure of that organization, but yeah, they would, if anybody does, it's them, it's not the village.
Thank you. And then maybe a question for the board, and sorry, I know we're probably well over what you guys wanted to be here to. If this is voted on, if this is something that we're looking to vote on, I think what would make it better if we were to vote on this would be a commitment from Bobby to provide what is that organization that they do plan on donating that money to. So I think you've mentioned this year, you're gonna give it to the school. Next year, you may look at something else. I think from my perspective, then us as board members can make a decision. If this is something that we feel comfortable donating to their cause, and then they can donate to that charitable organization if they have that amount remaining. And the reason I say that is because there may be a charity that Bobby supports and his organization supports that the town does not. And we may choose in that instance to not approve the funds in that instance versus a different one. So a stipulation in your approach to the board, I would ask that be put into there of this is where I would be committing to donate if possible. So thank you.
And I would commend that logic because the transfer last year to Green Gables is nobody's gonna make an issue out of it legally, but the village can't give money to an organization to donate to a private business, even one that's had a hardship. I mean, the public funds generally are intended to serve public purposes, and you could not make that transfer directly. And that which you can't do directly, you really shouldn't do indirectly. So I concur with Mitchell's thoughts there.
I would like to, Pat, tell me if I'm doing this wrong, I would just like to poll the board members on whether or not they plan to vote for making the $500 donation, so Bobby can go ahead and figure his budget and everything. It's a non-binding vote, but just want to get a consensus on where our trustees are at. So my question is, do you plan to vote to spend the $500 for the Holly Jolly Christmas lights for this year?
I would just comment broadly. I mean, you said last couple of years you always donate places. I had no idea you gave money to Green Gables.
Didn't read what I presented to the board every year.
Okay, so I completely missed that. So if I sound different this year, maybe I didn't read it last year, but yeah, I don't understand why we donate money to you and then you donate to somebody else, I don't understand that.
Cause it gets them, it gets them started for the year and then their goal is, right, so the, it's.
But
right,
we're giving
not?
them money to beautify Hudson, to put up lights and make it pretty, right? So even if you don't use it this year, like Dave said, you keep it and then you use it next year, and then you need less funds next year or something. But the idea that we give it to you and then you give, you give it to Green Gables? I really don't get that one. I mean, and even giving it to the school for rugs, I don't really get that either.
You know what? At this point, if it's gonna cause that much of an issue, I don't want it. I mean, we have people that want to beautify this town, bring something back to this town, get rid of the thought that come to Hudson to join in a community thing where all of our community organizations go to die. I've heard that from people. You know, Prairie Days died. We have people that want to try and do something for this town that we spend thousands of hours in our own sweat and energy on and don't get paid a thing for it. We have businesses, Smiley's wants to put in a display this year. It's beautiful. I've seen pictures of it. You guys have all seen the park and have seen what we can do. We're talking, you guys are spending $25 million on trying to see if we can do a sewer project. And we're talking about a $500 donation.
So I definitely want to give you the $500 donation to do exactly what you just said.
Right, I get that. And we have said every year, we have used the village's money for certain things. Because that went back to year one. You guys gave us $500, we bought lights for the archways, we bought all that. So if you want to specify what we did with the village's money.
I was just gonna say that, right?
Let me finish.
Yeah,
Last year, I put $500 worth of commercial grade LED lights in the tree. We spent your money and put it on lights. This year, I came to the podium tonight and said that we were going to build a mega tree. So, you know, I mean, I guess if you look at it from an organizational standpoint, we get more people to come to us saying, oh yeah, we can do this, we can make things pretty and make things magical for Christmas. But then we also want to try and be charitable. And that's been from the very first year. And my flyers, my information that I have brought to the board every year, now granted, I didn't bring it this year because I knew nothing about having to actually ask for the money each year, because last year I was told, oh, we put this in the budget. So I didn't come this year. I had to come because Nikki wasn't gonna be able to come here tonight. I'm glad I did. Because I know she would have crumbled and not spoken her voice. So again, if it's that big of a deal, because we're trying to do something and give money towards something, but also do something for the village as a community, do something for the community, that the town doesn't wanna help, you know. I mean, I know you do wanna help, I'm not trying to say you don't. But that could have been brought to my attention a long time ago, maybe year one, about, well, we'll support you with $500, but we don't want you to do any kind of charitable donation to someone else. Because that's how we advertise it.
I think from my perspective, the line items that you're referencing, that you're spending the 500 on, would be separate from your charitable donation. And I think there's potentially a misunderstanding with how it was phrased this evening, that you're just taking our money and saying, hey, look,
No, that was,
I'm
that's the
donating
second thing
this.
I said was what we were gonna spend the money on.
I understand that. What I'm saying is I think
So
there was a
that was-
misunderstanding. Can I finish? Okay. I think there was a misunderstanding this evening, right? I don't think that part was actually heard. I heard that. And that's why I would support the board approving the $500, right? But I do think that there is that stipulation that you indicated of, this is what it's going to. It's not going to this donation. You're not taking our 500 and then saying, here you go, Hudson Elementary, right? I would ask that you potentially think of a different thing at Hudson Elementary to donate to, because they don't need rugs and window paintings when they can't even get paper for the teachers. The teachers have to buy paper themselves. I know because my wife is one of them. So they don't need a rug and they don't need a screen for their window before they get a ream of paper that they can use for the students. So I would just ask you consider that when you're making your determination that's separate from this board. But as far as the 500 is concerned, I generally, Dave, would be in support of that.
Yeah, and I think we're asking moving forward that you do let us know ahead of time who you're planning on donating to that year, because we might have to say no just based on like what Pat said earlier, if it isn't something that we could as a village ourselves donate to, like if it doesn't.
But Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, if we are stipulating that it is going towards the light expense, the 60-foot tree, the actual lighting displays, then their organization can do whatever that their organization wants to do. We're saying this is what we're giving this money for. We're not giving it for that donation. Whatever they do as an organization is separate from us as a board, correct?
Yeah, if you word it that way, that we're making a grant for X, Y, and Z, the only thing I'd suggest is that you should make that an accountable grant where they have to give you receipts or records to document the expenditure. But yes, I agree that if you approach it that way, you're okay.
So then, Bobby, I think that would be a compromise that hopefully the board can get on board with. That I think we could move forward with, because there is no dispute that brings a lot of joy to the community. It also brings a lot of outsiders to our community, right? To partake in something special like this. So I would be in support of that. I would just ask you give us your one receipt for your lights that it's gonna cost to.
That's fine.
To take
And
some.
I also want to add that we have advertised monthly meetings. And the only person, and I can't say that he's representing the village board, but he's representing the village, is Mark, coming on behalf of the police department. So as far as us saying that for the last 6 months, that we have had the decision to donate to the Hudson Elementary School, that didn't just show up right before I came to this meeting. So I don't know if that's something that the village board could maybe attend one of our meetings from time to time. Or if, you know, as an employee from the village, if Mark needs to report back to the board about those kind of things. I mean, the information's there. I just don't have every Tuesday of first Tuesday of every month to come and sit in one of these meetings and tell you guys our updates.
I'm not sure we want to attend your meeting.
Well,
Because that
that's
makes,
completely your prerogative.
the reason I say that is because that makes a tie between the board and your organization, of which I don't think we want to do. At least I don't want to give that appearance that I am a part of your organization now as a board member.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that I don't, independent Mitch doesn't support what you guys do. I think as a board, we can allocate 500 for mega tree or whatever it is that you're gonna say, board, I would like a 20-foot Santa, right? Whatever that might be. And then in some unspecified time, you provide a receipt that says, here's how I spent that money. Whatever else you do as your organization, that's your organization's determination. And I think we have to make it that cut and dry. Now, me as an independent individual, I decorate my house all the time. I may come to one of your meetings as an individual, not as a board member. So.
And I think on the other part, I mean, I think a couple of years ago, when you were trying to start things up, I can see why they want to give you money to do that. But when, I know it's grown, I've seen the pictures, took the grandkids down here, you have a lot of displays. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, if each one of those participants spends money, then you're growing that, you have more revenue. And from my perspective, if you can just say, you know, if you can say, oh, these are our aggregate costs, these are our aggregate revenues, not split it out. This was last year's, this is what we have, and maybe after, in January, send in an email, to the board or something, saying, this is what you don't have to come to the meeting on, you can just send it to the mayor or to one of us. And then we can communicate that, saying this is what their expenses and costs were, and then it's the follow-up too. So it's like, this is before, this is what we did, and then this is how well it went.
That sounds
Yeah,
like
but-
we're trying to run their.
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not what you guys need to be taking a look at.
No,
I can give you, I have
What
no
I'm saying,
problem.
everybody has different perspectives, but that is my perspective, Bobby, and it's different from everybody else's here and your perspective. But that is not saying that I want to know every detail, but if we are saying we're contributing to this, I want to know what I'm contributing to. That's what I'm saying. As a board, individual is
And that's
different.
completely fine, I have no problem giving you guys the receipts, and I can probably even dig out the invoice that I paid last year for the lights in that tree. But that's for your $500. I don't think it's right for me to have to itemize all the money,
You don't have to.
because I'm sorry, but
No,
Kathy is one of my part owners as a citizen. And she can do what she wants with that $50 or whatever she makes. So if I'm doing that for you guys, as far as giving you our whole itemized list,
I'm not asking an itemized list.
but
I
you
said
are asking,
aggregate.
you're asking me to provide you with what all of our money went to.
No, an aggregate, revenues and expenses, aggregate. So
Okay,
Kevin.
that is Kevin's opinion, that is not what the board is requesting.
yeah.
Kevin,
So-
I would just ask that you consider, would it change your mind based on the value that brings to Hudson? Would it change your mind if it was a $2 million organization or if it was a $10 organization, given that us as a board, he's not coming here asking for $1,500 now. He's coming here asking for the same amount he's always been asking for. Now, if he comes to us all of a sudden and starts saying, I need $2,000, hey, now we need to figure out, okay, what's going on? But my understanding would be the town of Hudson or the village of Hudson is contributing to this cause that directly benefits the village. And it's for Christmas lights, for some of these specific items. I'm just asking if it would change your opinion if.
I'm just saying from my perspective, though, I'm saying, okay, this is where we're at. It'd be kind of nice to see as a board, okay, this is where it's grown. So that's what I'm saying is that, okay, from a perspective, this is where we're at year one here. And then when they request the funds, at least it hasn't, like I said, I don't want them to name every single person. I don't want them to name every single expense, but then have an idea of, well, okay, have a history of that, because if we're asking for public funds, I just want to know where they're asking for. It'd be just like something else, like when they come with the tip district, they're saying, oh, you know what, they need more detail. I'm not asking for that detail, but just as a general, before and after. He doesn't have to show up to the meeting, he doesn't have to put all the extra time in, but just as an aggregate, my perspective.
Okay, that's your opinion, that's not a request from the board for you to do that, Bobby. Okay, right now I need to find out from board members if we plan to vote yes or no, it's a non-binding question, to donate the $500 next month. We can't do it this month, so, will you poll the board members, Allison?
Sure. Joe Boyd,
Yes.
Can I jump in? I would really rather you not call a vote like that. I mean, if everybody could just express their position, I think we probably teeter into the line of making it an official vote if Allison's calling a roll.
Thank you, that's why I wanted you to correct me as we go through this, we don't do this very often, so.
My sentiment remains, I would be in support of the 500.
Okay,
Yeah, same.
okay, so we have a consensus that we will vote yes on the $500 donation for next month, so you can count on that in your budget, Bobby. Okay. All right, is there any other business for the village tonight? Last call,
I know, I'm thinking hard.
okay, if
I'm trying
not,
to avoid that sound.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Your kids are home.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, meeting is adjourned.
You don't have to go home, you can't stay here.
They're always.
Well, welcome.